Hi, my name's Stephen and this is a quick intro to decimal multiplication. I created this video mainly for my own students, but just because when we get into tertiary education, we usually forget how to do these simple things like multiplying decimals by hand. I think mainly because once we get into high school, we tend to rely on our calculators. Alright, so let's start off with a nice easy one. So let's think of 0.02 times 0.3. Now 0.02 is the same as 2 over 100 because 0.02 is 2 hundredths. 0.3, that guy is the same as 3 tenths. So that's hundredths and tenths with THS on the end. Now don't forget, when you multiply fractions, you multiply the numerators together and you multiply the denominators together. So I usually call that through and through multiplication. So there's a nice rule in case you've forgotten. All right, now back to our original question. 2 over 100 times 3 on 10. Well, that's the same as 2 on 3, 2 times 3 on the numerator, over 100 times 10 on the denominator. So that's 6 over 1,000, which is 6 thousandths, which is the same as 0.006. All right, so on that last slide, that looked a little bit long-winded, and it is. But it turns out that we can actually do all of that a little bit simpler. So let's have a look at 0.02 times 0.3 again. If we have a look at 0.02, we have 1, 2 decimal places. If we look at 0.3, we have 1 decimal place. Now that totals 3 decimal places. So let's have a bit of a think. 0.02 was 2 divided by 100. 0.3 was 3 divided by 10. So if I could multiply 2 and 3 together, I'm actually going to divide by 1,000 if I was to place it in the fractions like I did on the last slide. And it turns out that's actually what happens every time. So really, you could just think, in those numerators, 2 times 3 was 6. And I'm going to have to divide by, so I'm going to have to divide by a power of 10, where the power is the number of decimal places I have. So if you don't understand powers, basically we're going to write down 6 and we need to have in our answer the same number of decimal places that was in the question. So here there were 3 decimal places. In our answer there should be 3 decimal places as well. So let's look at a harder one. So 0.24 times 0.12. How many decimal places will our answer have? Well, there's 2 decimal places in 0.24. There's 2 decimal places in 0.12. 2 plus 2 is 4. So my final answer should have 4 decimal places. All right, so now that it actually comes to doing the multiplication, you can do this in any method that you want. I personally prefer the table method that I've got there. So with the table method, I've had a look at 0.24, and I know that I'm essentially doing 24 times 12. So what I've done is I've split up 24 into the tens and the ones, then I've split 12 into the tens and the ones as well. So now multiplying the tens together, that's 10 times 2, which is basically the same as 1 times 2, but I add 2 zeros. Then 10 times 4 is 40. 2 times 20 is also 40. And 2 times 4 is 8. Then adding all of those together, I get 288. Now for actually writing down my answer for 0.24 times 0.12, if I write down 288, I've already used up 1, 2, 3 of my decimal places, and I know my answer should have 4. So let's write down a 4 there. And what I do is I just put a 0 there. Because remember, it's kind of like we've got 288, but then we're shifting it down a whole bunch of spaces. Don't forget to add the point as well. Because we've got a number less than 0, we always have to write 0 point something. So there you have it. 0.24 times 0.12 is 0.0288. Alright, one more one. So I've included this one in just because I essentially want to demonstrate that even though we have this number 1.20, that number 1 doesn't really change a whole lot of stuff. We still have 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places. So our answer should still have 4 decimal places. Alright, so our problem simply boils down really to multiplying 120 by 35. So first, let's split up 120 into the hundreds, tens, and ones. So I have 100, 2 tens, and no ones. In 35, I have 3 tens to make 30, and 5 ones to make 5. Now, 30 times 100, 3 times 1 is 3. There's 3 zeros in 30 times 100, so I add 3 zeros. In 30 times 20, well, 3 times 2 is 6, and then add 2 zeros, and 0 times 30 is just 0. 5 times 100 is 500. 5 times 20, well, 5 times 2 is 10, and then add a 0, so that's just 100. And 5 times 0 is just 0. Now, if you verify that either on a calculator, or I'd encourage you to do it by hand because we're doing everything by hand for this exercise, that ends up adding up to 4,200. Now, that's a 4-digit number, and there were 4 digits in 4 decimal places, sorry, in 1.20 times 0.35. So we've actually used up all 4 decimal spaces, and then we just have to add a 0 and a point. Now, if you would have done that question, you could have turned it into 1.2 times 0.35. In that case, you would have had 3 decimal places. And that's okay too. You would have ended up getting 420. And you would have taken up all 3 decimal spaces and then had to put a 0 at the front. So you would have actually gotten the same answer. In fact, you can verify that for yourself. Using this method, try 1.2 times 0.35, and you should get the same answer. Alright, thanks very much. Feel free to leave some comments, they're always helpful, and have a good day.